Teachers, what's the most elaborate way a student ever tried to frame you for something you didn't do? Brandon started staying after class in October. He was a quiet junior who'd never spoken much before, but suddenly, he wanted to talk about college applications and career advice. I'm a high school history teacher, and students asking for help wasn't unusual, so I didn't think much of it at first. He'd linger after the bell, asking questions about my teaching career, where I went to school, what made me want to work with teenagers, normal, curious student stuff, except he'd also ask weird, specific questions about my schedule, what time I arrived in the morning, whether I stayed late to grade papers, if I ever came in on weekends. I'd answer casually, not thinking anything was wrong. Brandon seemed like a good kid trying to figure out his future. But then small things started appearing in my classroom. A silver bracelet on my desk that wasn't mine. A hoodie hanging on the back of my chair that didn't belong to anyone in my classes. A phone charging cable plugged into my computer that I'd never seen before. Each time, I'd put the items in the lost and found, assuming students had forgotten them, but it kept happening. New items every few days, always left in spots that made it look like they belonged there. My coworker Sarah mentioned she'd seen Brandon hanging around my classroom during her planning period when I wasn't there. She asked if he was working on a project for me. I said no, and that's when I started paying closer attention. Brandon would show up before school started, standing outside my locked classroom. He'd be there after the final bell too, even when he didn't have questions, always watching, always nearby. I checked the sign-in logs at the front office and found Brandon had requested a student aid position specifically for my classroom period, claiming he needed teaching observation hours for college applications. The counselor approved it without asking me. So for 2 weeks, Brandon had a legitimate reason to be in my room during my planning period, alone, while I was at lunch or in meetings. I started documenting everything, photos of the strange items appearing in my room, dates and times when Brandon showed up unexpectedly, notes about his odd questions. Something was building, but I couldn't figure out what. Then my principal called me in for a meeting. She looked uncomfortable, said there'd been a complaint filed against me. A student claimed I'd taken personal items from them, jewelry, a hoodie, a phone cable, the same items that had been appearing in my classroom. My stomach dropped. The student said I'd been keeping their belongings in my desk, that they'd seen me with their stuff during class. The principal said she had to investigate, that she'd need to search my classroom. We walked back to my room together, and she went straight to my desk. The bottom drawer, the one I rarely opened, was full of items I'd never seen before. Expensive items. A silver necklace, designer sunglasses, car keys, someone's wallet with cash still inside. The principal's face changed as she pulled each item out, lining them up on my desk. She asked how I'd explain having student belongings locked in my desk. I had no answer. I'd never touched any of these things. Brandon appeared in the doorway right then, and I saw his expression. That's when I realized what I'd never expected. The rest of the story is on my channel or linked below. I see it now. Brandon's face. That slight smile. That look of satisfaction as the principal pulls each item from my drawer like she's uncovering evidence at a crime scene. His eyes meet mine for just a second, and I understand everything at once. Miss Chen, the principal says, her voice hardening as she places a wallet on my desk. This belongs to Jason Myers in junior year. He reported it missing 3 days ago. My mouth goes dry. I've never seen these things before. I don't know how they got in my drawer. Brandon leans against the doorframe, arms crossed over his chest. He looks like he's watching his favorite movie, completely engrossed in the scene unfolding. Then how do you explain this? The principal holds up the silver necklace. Emily Wilson's grandmother gave her this for her 16th birthday. She was devastated when it disappeared last week. I didn't take it, I say, my voice rising with panic. I've never touched any of these things. Someone must have put them there. The principal's expression shifts from disappointment to suspicion. Your drawer was locked, Miss Chen. Who else has access to your keys? My mind races. My keys are always in my bag or pocket, except during gym duty, when I leave them in my desk. During lunch, when I'm not in my classroom. Brandon shifts his weight, drawing my attention. That's when I see it, the gleam in his eyes. He's enjoying this. He planned this. The security cameras. I blurt out. Check the security cameras. They'll show who put these items in my desk. Brandon's smile falters for the first time. A flash of something concern, fear, crosses his face before he composes himself. The principal hesitates. Miss Chen, are you suggesting a student planted these items to frame you? Yes. I point at Brandon without thinking. He's been hanging around my classroom when I'm not here. Sarah Rodriguez saw him. He got himself assigned as my student aide without my knowledge. He's had access to my room during my lunch period for weeks. Brandon's face transforms into a mask of hurt innocence. Miss Chen, why would I do that? I just wanted to learn about teaching. The principal looks between us, clearly uncertain. That's a serious accusation. Please, I say, trying to keep my voice steady. Just check the cameras. If I'm wrong, I'll accept whatever consequences come. But I know I didn't take these things. She studies my face for a long moment, then nods. Fine, let's go to the security office. Brandon steps forward. Do you need me to stay, Principal Daniels? I have calculus next period. Stay, she says firmly. This involves you now. The walk to the security office feels endless. Brandon trails behind us, his footsteps echoing in the empty hallway. I can feel his eyes boring into my back. The security guard, Mr. Reyes, looks up from his monitors when we enter. Principal Daniels explains the situation while I stand there, arms crossed tightly over my chest, trying to control my breathing. We need to see footage of room 214 during lunch periods for the past 2 weeks, she says. Mr. Reyes types something into his computer. That's Miss Chen's room, right? Let me pull it up. Brandon shifts uncomfortably beside me. His confidence seems to be cracking. Good. Here we go, Mr. Reyes says, turning his monitor so we can all see. I'll start with yesterday's lunch period. The footage shows my empty classroom. The timestamp reads 12:05 p.m., 5 minutes after the lunch bell. The room remains empty until 12:13. When the door opens, Brandon walks in, looking over his shoulder before entering. He goes directly to my desk, pulls out a key from his pocket, and unlocks the bottom drawer. My breath catches. That's not my key. He must have made a copy somehow. On screen, Brandon reaches into his backpack and pulls out several items, the wallet, the sunglasses, the necklace, and carefully arranges them in my drawer. He locks it again, pockets the key, and leaves the room at 12:17. The silence in the security office is deafening. Principal Daniels turns slowly to face Brandon, whose face has drained of all color. "Brandon," she says quietly, "would you like to explain what we just saw?" He opens his mouth, closes it, then tries again. That's not what it looks like. It looks like you planted stolen items in Miss Chen's desk," Principal Daniels says. "It looks like you deliberately set up a teacher to take the fall for theft." Brandon's composure shatters. "She deserved it. She was going to fail me." "I've never threatened to fail you," I say, stunned by the accusation. "You have a B+ in my class. You were going to figure it out," he shouts, his face contorting with anger. "You were watching me too closely. You knew!" Principal Daniels steps between us. "Knew what, Brandon?" But Brandon doesn't answer. He shoves past Mr. Reyes and storms out of the office, slamming the door behind him. Principal Daniels turns to me, her expression apologetic. "Miss Chen, I am so sorry. I should have questioned this more thoroughly before confronting you." I nod, still processing what just happened. "It's okay. You were doing your job." "No, it's not okay," she says firmly. "I'll call Brandon's parents immediately, and we'll need to find out if he's responsible for the other items that have been appearing in your classroom." Mr. Reyes is already rewinding through more footage. "I'll check every lunch period for the past month." I sink into a chair, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that's been keeping me upright drains away, leaving me shaky and hollow. "Thank you for insisting on the cameras," Principal Daniels says quietly. "If you hadn't..." She doesn't finish the sentence. She doesn't need to. We both know what would have happened. A disciplinary hearing, possible suspension, maybe even losing my job, all because a student decided to target me for reasons I still don't understand. As I watch Mr. Reyes scroll through more footage of Brandon entering my classroom on different days, I realize this isn't over. The look on Brandon's face when he ran out, that wasn't the look of someone who's been caught and accepted defeat. That was the look of someone whose plans have been disrupted. Someone who's already thinking about what to do next. Brandon gets suspended for a week pending investigation, and I should feel relieved. Instead, I'm on edge, constantly looking over my shoulder as I walk through the school hallways. The day after the security footage revelation, Principal Daniels calls me into her office to update me on the situation. His parents are insisting this is completely out of character, she says, rubbing her temples. They want to see the footage themselves. "Are they questioning what happened?" I ask, my stomach tightening. She sighs. "They're struggling to reconcile the Brandon they know with what we saw on camera. I don't blame them, but facts are facts." I nod, gathering my courage before asking, "Do you think I should be concerned about him coming back?" "We'll be monitoring the situation closely," she assures me, but her words feel hollow. The next day, I'm reorganizing my classroom during my planning period when I find a folded piece of paper tucked inside my copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. My hands shake as I unfold it to find a crude drawing of a woman clearly meant to be me with X's over her eyes. That's not all. Over the next 2 days, I discover more items hidden throughout my classroom. A bracelet wedged behind my desk calendar, a phone charger cord coiled inside my supply cabinet, even a hair tie tucked into my desk lamp. Each discovery sends a fresh wave of nausea through me. Sarah stops by during lunch on Thursday, her face grim. "I need to tell you something," she says, closing my classroom door behind her. "Brandon was asking me really specific questions about your schedule a few weeks ago." I set down my sandwich. "What kind of questions?" "When you take bathroom breaks, which parking spot is yours? If you ever stay late after school?" She wraps her arms around herself. I thought he was just being thorough about the student aid position. "I'm so sorry, Jen. I should have mentioned it sooner." "You couldn't have known," I say, but my mind is racing through all the implications. That afternoon, I receive the first email. It comes from an anonymous account with the subject line, "Watching you." The message is simple. Teachers who lie get what they deserve. I forward it to Principal Daniels immediately. Her response comes an hour later. "Probably just a student prank. I'll have IT look into it, but these things are hard to trace. Try not to worry." But the messages keep coming. 3 more over the next 2 days, each more disturbing than the last. "Check your car. Everyone knows what you did. You'll be sorry when I come back." I show them to Principal Daniels again, but she maintains they're likely just pranks from other students who heard about what happened. "Teenagers love drama," she says dismissively. "They're probably trying to scare you for their own amusement." I want to believe her, but when I walk to my car Friday afternoon and find all 4 tires slashed, I know this is more than a prank. I call the police immediately, standing in the empty faculty parking lot as the sun starts to set, feeling exposed and vulnerable. The officer who responds is sympathetic, but not particularly helpful. "Do you have any proof it was this student?" he asks after taking my statement. "Not directly," I admit, "but the timing." "Correlation isn't causation, ma'am," he interrupts. "Without witnesses or camera footage of the actual vandalism, there's not much we can do except file a report." I spend the weekend looking over my shoulder, jumping at every noise in my apartment. By Monday morning, I've barely slept, and the whispers that follow me through the hallways don't help. That's her, the teacher who tried to frame Brandon. I heard she's done this before at other schools. My cousin goes to Brandon's church. His mom says the teacher is mentally unstable. The rumors spread like wildfire. Students who were friendly last week now avoid eye contact. A few parents email to express concerns about their children being in my class. One even requests a transfer to another English section. Principal Daniels calls me in again, her expression strained. "This will blow over," she assures me. "Just keep your head down and focus on teaching." But when Brandon returns the following Monday, everything gets worse. He's transformed himself, completely quiet, respectful, slightly wounded. He keeps his eyes downcast when he passes me in the hall, flinching slightly as if afraid I might attack him. It's a masterful performance. During third period, my classroom door opens, and Principal Daniels appears with 2 adults I immediately recognize from Brandon's social media photos, his parents. "Miss Chen," Principal Daniels says stiffly, "the Millers would like a word with you after school today." I nod, acutely aware of 30 pairs of student eyes watching this exchange with rapt attention. The meeting is as awful as I anticipated. Brandon sits between his parents, the perfect picture of a wrongfully accused victim. "We understand there was a misunderstanding," Mrs. Miller begins, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I say firmly. "The security footage clearly showed Boys make mistakes, Mr. Miller interrupts. Brandon has admitted to a momentary lapse in judgment, but the way this has been handled has devastated him. His reputation is ruined. My reputation, I start, but Principal Daniels cuts me off. We're not here to assign blame, she says diplomatically. We're here to find a path forward. Mrs. Miller leans forward, her eyes cold. We believe that path should include a public apology from Miss Chen for the accusations she made against our son. I stare at her in disbelief. An apology? He planted stolen items in my desk to frame me for theft. And he's been punished for that, Mr. Miller says. A week's suspension. Academic probation. But the rumors you've spread about him being dangerous, about him stalking you, those are false accusations that are damaging his future. I haven't spread any rumors. I protest, looking to Principal Daniels for support. She clears her throat uncomfortably. There have been discussions among the faculty and students, and without concrete evidence linking Brandon to the emails or your car, we need to be careful about making additional accusations. I feel like I'm drowning. Brandon hasn't said a word this entire meeting, just sits there with his head slightly bowed, occasionally glancing up through his lashes to gauge the room's reaction. When our eyes meet briefly, I see it again, that flash of satisfaction, quickly masked by practiced innocence. He's winning, and he knows it. I'm still in shock as I sit across from Brandon's parents in the conference room, their faces twisted with righteous indignation. Mr. Miller pounds his fist on the table, making me flinch. We're prepared to pursue legal action for defamation if these unfounded accusations continue, he says, his voice rising. My son has been publicly humiliated, and his academic future is at risk because of your vendetta against him. Principal Daniels shifts uncomfortably beside me. Mr. Miller, I understand your frustration, but we do have video evidence of Brandon planting stolen items in Miss Chen's desk, which he's already been punished for. Mrs. Miller cuts in, her voice ice cold. A momentary lapse in judgment from an otherwise exemplary student. But these new claims, stalking, threatening emails, vandalism, there's absolutely no proof connecting Brandon to any of it. I take a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. With all due respect, I've been documenting Brandon's behavior for weeks. I slide a folder across the table. This contains a detailed timeline of incidents, including witness statements from other faculty members who noticed Brandon's unusual interest in my schedule and whereabouts. Mr. Miller barely glances at the folder before pushing it away. Circumstantial observations from biased colleagues, hardly compelling evidence. The door opens, and Dr. Winters, our school counselor, steps in. I've never been so relieved to see her stern, no-nonsense expression. Sorry I'm late, she says, taking the empty seat beside me. I was pulling Brandon's file. Brandon, who has been sitting silently this entire time, straightens up slightly. His eyes narrow as he watches Dr. Winters arrange her papers. I don't recall inviting the counselor to this meeting, Mrs. Miller says sharply. I asked her to join us, Principal Daniels replies. Given the nature of the situation, I thought her professional insight would be valuable. Dr. Winters adjusts her glasses. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, I've been reviewing Brandon's psychological evaluation from last semester. Are you aware that his assessment flagged several concerning patterns? The atmosphere in the room shifts instantly. Brandon's father leans forward, his aggressive posture faltering slightly. What are you talking about? We were never notified of any issues. We sent 3 emails requesting a follow-up appointment, Dr. Winters says, sliding a printout toward them. All went unanswered. Mrs. Miller glances at her husband, confusion evident on her face. We never received any emails about this. Brandon stares at his hands, suddenly very interested in his cuticles. Dr. Winters continues, her voice measured. The evaluation noted obsessive tendencies, difficulty with rejection, and concerning patterns of fixation. These aren't diagnoses, but they are warning signs that warranted further assessment. This is ridiculous, Brandon mutters, speaking for the first time. They're just trying to make me look crazy now. Principal Daniels clears her throat. There's more. We contacted Brandon's previous school yesterday. Brandon's head snaps up, his carefully constructed mask of innocence slipping for a moment. Fear flashes across his face. They informed us that Brandon was involved in a similar situation with a female math teacher before transferring here. Principal Daniels continues. The matter was handled internally, and no formal charges were filed. But that was completely different, Brandon interrupts, his voice rising. Miss Hoffman was trying to fail me because she didn't like me. I was just defending myself. His parents exchange worried glances, the certainty in their expressions beginning to crack. We weren't aware of any incident at Westlake, Mr. Miller says slowly. Brandon told us he wanted to transfer because their math program wasn't challenging enough. I watch as the realization dawns on them their son has been lying to them, possibly for years. There's something else you should see, Principal Daniels says quietly, turning her laptop around. This is security footage from last night. The screen shows the darkened hallway outside my classroom. The timestamp reads 11:47 p.m. A figure in a hoodie approaches my door, looks around furtively, then pulls out what appears to be a key. The person slips inside. The camera inside your classroom captured this, Principal Daniels continues, switching to another video. Brandon, his face clearly visible now as he lowers his hood, methodically destroys my classroom. He overturns desks, rips posters from walls, dumps the contents of my drawers onto the floor. But what chills me most is the way he does it, not in a frenzy of rage, but with calculated precision, like he's following a plan. The security alarm was triggered at 12:13 a.m., Principal Daniels says. Police responded and found Brandon still in the building. Mrs. Miller covers her mouth with her hand. Why weren't we called? Brandon convinced the responding officers that he was working on a surprise for Teacher Appreciation Week. He showed them a student ID and claimed to have permission. Principal Daniels sighs. They escorted him out with a warning. We only discovered what really happened when reviewing the footage this morning. When the police searched Brandon's bedroom this afternoon, they found this, Dr. Winters adds, sliding a photo across the table. The image shows what can only be described as a shrine. Dozens of photos of me taken without my knowledge. Me walking to my car. Me at a coffee shop near campus. Me grocery shopping. Interspersed between the photos are items I recognize as mine. A pen I thought I'd lost. A scarf that disappeared from my classroom classroom closet, even a lipstick I'd recently replaced, thinking I'd used it up. Mrs. Miller makes a strangled sound. This can't be real. They also found this, Dr. Winters says, producing a photocopy of journal pages. Brandon's detailed plan to get you fired, Miss Chen. It outlines every step, from stealing items to plant in your desk to spreading rumors among students. Brandon suddenly stands, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. You had no right to go through my things, he shouts, his face contorted with rage. Those were private. Sit down, Brandon, his father says, his voice hollow with shock. No, you're all against me. Brandon's voice rises to a scream. He grabs the edge of the table, flipping it toward us. Papers and water bottles go flying as we all jump back. Principal Daniels reaches for the phone on the wall, but Brandon is already backing toward the door, his breathing ragged. You'll be sorry, he says, his eyes locked on mine. You ruined everything. Before anyone can stop him, he bolts from the room. Mr. Miller rushes after him, but returns moments later, shaking his head. He's gone. The police arrive within minutes. As they take statements, Mrs. Miller sits in stunned silence, tears streaming down her face. We didn't know, she keeps whispering. We really didn't know. 2 hours later, we get the call. Brandon has been found in the school parking lot, a bottle of pills in his hand. He's alive but unresponsive, being rushed to the hospital. The officer tells us he left a note in his car, threatening self-harm and blaming me for destroying his life. I sit in the principal's office as the Millers rush to the hospital, trying to process everything that's happened. Dr. Winters brings me tea, her hand steady on my shoulder. This isn't your fault, she says firmly. Brandon needs help that goes far beyond what our school can provide. I just don't understand why he targeted me, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Winters sighs. The police found evidence that you weren't his first fixation. There were journals about his former math teacher at Westlake, and letters he never sent to a swim coach before that, so I'm just the latest in a pattern, I say, the realization both disturbing and strangely relieving. At least I know it wasn't something specific I did to trigger this behavior. Later that evening, Detective Rivera calls to inform me that Brandon has been placed on a 72-hour psychiatric hold. His parents have finally acknowledged the severity of the situation and are cooperating fully with both the police and mental health professionals. You should know, Detective Rivera adds, we found evidence that Brandon had been targeting female teachers since middle school. Nothing this elaborate before, but the pattern was there. You just happened to be the one who caught him. As I hang up, I stare at my reflection in the darkened window of my apartment. For weeks, I've been looking over my shoulder, questioning my own sanity, feeling like prey. Now I know the truth, but it brings little comfort. A troubled young man's obsession has left scars on both our lives, visible and invisible, that will take a long time to heal. It's been 3 weeks since Brandon was taken away in an ambulance, and I still flinch every time I hear footsteps behind me in the hallway. The school feels different now, quieter, more watchful. Security guards patrol the corridors between classes, and there's a new check-in system for visitors, all because of what happened with Brandon. How are you holding up? Sarah asks, sliding a coffee across my desk. It's our new morning ritual. She stops by my classroom before first period, bringing caffeine and normal conversation. Better, I say, and it's not entirely a lie. The nightmares are less frequent now. Dr. Levine says it's normal to still feel anxious. Dr. Levine is my therapist, another new addition to my life post-Brandon. Principal Daniels arranged for the school district to cover the sessions after everything that happened. At first, I resisted, insisted I was fine, but after waking up at 3 a.m. for the 5th night in a row, convinced someone was in my apartment, I finally made the call. I heard Brandon's been transferred to Pinewood, Sarah says carefully, watching my reaction. Pinewood is a residential treatment facility for troubled teens about 2 hours north of here. The news doesn't surprise me, but it still sends a small chill through my body. His mother called me yesterday. I admit, something I haven't told anyone yet. She wanted to apologize again, said he's getting intensive therapy there. What I don't share is how Mrs. Miller broke down crying during the call, asking repeatedly how she could have missed the signs, how she described finding a box under Brandon's bed containing items stolen from his previous math teacher earrings, a coffee mug with her name, even strands of hair carefully preserved in plastic bags. The image has been haunting me since. The new security protocols are being implemented district-wide, Sarah says, changing the subject when she notices my discomfort. Student aid assignments now require 2 teacher signatures and weekly supervision check-ins. I nod, taking a sip of coffee. Too little, too late. Miss Chen? A tentative voice comes from the doorway. It's Emma, a sophomore I recognize from my 4th period class. She hovers uncertainly, clutching her backpack strap. Come in, Emma. What's up? Sarah gives my arm a gentle squeeze before heading out, leaving Emma and me alone. The girl approaches my desk slowly, her eyes downcast. I wanted to tell you something, she says, her voice barely above a whisper. About Brandon. My stomach tightens, but I keep my expression neutral. What about him? He used to talk about you all the time. To anyone who would listen. She twists her backpack strap nervously. He told people you were going to help him get into Columbia because you had connections there. Said you were writing him a special recommendation letter. I shake my head slowly. I never promised him anything like that. I know, Emma says quickly. That's why I'm telling you now. He would show people texts from you, but Jason saw him once creating fake messages on some app that makes it look like someone else texted you. The revelation shouldn't shock me after everything else, but somehow it does the level of calculation, the elaborate fantasy he'd constructed. Why didn't you say something sooner? I ask, trying to keep accusation out of my voice. Emma's eyes fill with tears. He said if anyone interfered, he'd make sure they regretted it. He knew things about everyone, secrets, stuff we didn't want getting out. She wipes her eyes with her sleeve. I'm really sorry, Miss Chen. After Emma leaves, I sit at my desk, staring at the wall. How many other students knew pieces of what was happening but were too afraid to speak up? The thought makes me feel sick. Later that afternoon, Principal Daniels calls me to her office. She's not alone. A woman in a crisp pantsuit sits across from her desk, a folder open in her lap. Miss Chen, this is Vanessa Ortiz from the district office. Principal Daniels introduces us. She's been reviewing Brandon's case and his history at previous schools. Miss Ortiz shakes my hand firmly. We've uncovered some disturbing information I thought you should be aware of. love. She opens her folder and slides a photo across the desk, a woman in her 30s with dark hair and glasses, standing in front of a whiteboard covered in math equations. This is Catherine Hoffman, Brandon's math teacher from Westlake, Miss Ortiz explains. 2 years ago, Brandon developed a fixation on her, similar to his obsession with you. It started with him volunteering to help after class, escalated to him following her to her car, and culminated in him breaking into her classroom and vandalizing it when she reported his behavior. I stare at the photo, struck by the physical similarities between us. We could almost be sisters. The school handled it internally, Miss Ortiz continues. His parents transferred him here, rather than face disciplinary action. Miss Hoffman left teaching shortly after. And before that? I ask, already knowing there must be more. Miss Ortiz nods grimly. A swim coach at his middle school. She quit mid-season after receiving disturbing notes in her locker. The pattern goes back to 6th grade. Always female authority figures with similar appearances. Principal Daniels leans forward. We're implementing new protocols across the district based on what we've learned from this case. Better communication between schools about transfer students with concerning behavior patterns. Mandatory reporting of stalking behaviors, even if they seem minor, and training for all staff on recognizing warning signs. 2 days later, I find myself standing at a podium in the district conference center, facing a room full of teachers from across the county. Principal Daniels asked me to share my experience as part of an emergency training session. My hands shake as I adjust the microphone. I thought I was being paranoid, I begin, when items started appearing in my classroom, a bracelet, a hoodie, a phone cable. I dismissed it as students being careless. When I caught Brandon watching me during my planning period, I told myself he was just eager to learn about teaching. The room is silent, dozens of faces watching me intently. The warning signs were there, I continue. His detailed knowledge of my schedule, the way he maneuvered himself into a position of access as a student aide without my knowledge, the personal questions that crossed professional boundaries. But I didn't connect the dots until it was almost too late. After the presentation, Sarah finds me in the hallway. Her eyes are red-rimmed, and she pulls me into a tight hug. I'm so sorry, she whispers against my shoulder. I should have told you sooner about him asking questions about your schedule. I just didn't think it meant anything serious. It's not your fault, I tell her, and I mean it. None of us recognized what was happening until it escalated. A week later, a letter arrives at school in a plain white envelope. The return address is Pinewood Residential Treatment Center. Inside is a single page of professional letterhead. Dear Miss Chen, it begins. I'm Dr. Marcus Reynolds, Brandon Miller's primary therapist at Pinewood. With his parents' permission, I wanted to inform you that Brandon is engaged in intensive treatment for his obsessive and stalking behaviors. While his progress is in the early stages, he has acknowledged the harm his actions caused and is working to understand the underlying issues driving his behavior. The letter continues with clinical language about boundaries and cognitive distortions, ending with an assurance that Brandon will remain in residential treatment for the foreseeable future and will not be returning to our school district under any circumstances. I fold the letter carefully and place it in my desk drawer. It's not closure, not really, but it's something. My first day back to full-time teaching feels surreal. My classroom has been repaired, all traces of Brandon's vandalism erased. New security cameras have been installed in the corners, their tiny red lights blinking reassuringly. As students file in for first period, I notice they watch me differently now, with curiosity, maybe even concern. The story has spread throughout the school, morphing and changing with each retelling. I've heard versions where Brandon had a shrine with candles and animal sacrifices, where I fought him off with martial arts when he attacked me, where we had a secret relationship that went wrong. None of them know the whole truth, and I prefer it that way. Good morning, everyone, I say, scanning the faces before me. Today, we're starting our unit on unreliable narrators in literature. I pause, taking a deep breath. This is what healing looks like, standing in my classroom, doing what I love, reclaiming the space that was briefly poisoned by fear. Let's begin.